right, welcome into the Florence Barleycorns for another edition of the Cooper Football Show with Jaguars coach Randy Borchers and others. I'm your host, Tom Gamble. It's already week 10 of 11. Remember, in Kentucky, 11 weeks to play 10 games, but this is the 10th and final game of the regular season. Then Cooper takes a week off to prepare for the second season, the season that matters, the playoffs. Billy Prickett on audio. Matt Razor back from Asheville, North Carolina, where he said it was quite devastating down there for Duke Energy. We've got an action-packed show for you tonight. Mike Dyer from WCPO.com and formerly of the Enquirer, one of the most respected journalists covering high school sports in greater Cincinnati and northern Kentucky for years. Joins me. A lot to talk about. Mike does a lot of recruiting, so we'll find out about some of the recruiting news. We'll talk about some of the top teams this side of the river, the other side of the river, and we have two new players tonight, Max Wethington and Corey Freihofer, so that'll be two guys for the first. Look at that. Apparently popular guys, right? So there you go. And then we'll welcome you back up to talk about Friday night, week 10, and where you have an opportunity to do something that only three other schools, well, there's only four schools in the Boone County District, but you'll become the fourth, right? Boone County did it in 1987 and 94, Connor in 2003, Ryle in 2016. What is that? A perfect 10-0 regular season. That's pretty cool. I mean, you got to get it done, right? You got to win at Dixie, but nonetheless, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, it would be, and I think that was our goal kind of coming into the year. Obviously that's kind of the goal for everybody to go 10-0, win a state championship. But it's one of those things we knew we had a tough schedule. When you look at it, we've gone through the gauntlet. So if we can pull it off Friday night, it's a pretty big accomplishment for our program.
So Dixie is the host on Friday night, 7 o'clock kickoff, a little earlier, 30 minutes earlier. Dixie 3-5, 2-2 in the district. You guys now coming off back-to-back where you have running clock in the second quarter. Last week, 48-14, the final against Boone County, and we'll touch on that. I mean, do you worry, and there's not much you can do about it. I mean, you just play the schedule that's in front of you, but you did allude to the fact you played Ryle, 121-14, and you played Highlands, a close game. Those were really the two toughest games, obviously, of the season. You had a tough game against Great Crossing up until the latter part of the first half. Do you worry about the mindset? Do you practice differently? How did you approach the last 2 weeks? And I guess it's good to get back to playing a team. Dixie, very physical up front. They gave you a close game last year, but what have you done, if anything, differently, and how do you approach now? Do you use the, hey, we got a chance to do something that's never been done before, and that's a 10-0 perfect season?
Yeah, kind of coming into the last 2 weeks, and we've talked about this throughout the year. Our passing game has been really solid. Our running game has been suspect a little bit in big games, so we've really wanted to focus on the running game the past 2 weeks. One of the things we talked to our kids about, this week were, we don't really know. It's hard to tell if we really got better or not. Last 2 games we ran less than 20 plays with our first group, on the offensive side. So, we were able to do what we wanted to do, but I don't know if that's just because we were better than those teams or if we're really getting better. So, we kind of looked at it as this is, we're approaching this week as it's the first week of the playoffs. We got to get better. We want to be playing our best ball come playoff time. So we're kind of approaching this as the first round of playoffs. We're playing a physical team, and we feel we told our kids we got a bye week next week. So how we play this game depends on how we go into that bye week. Are we feeling good or bad going into it?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. A couple of people have said, they had this many points in the first. You had 48 in the first half, and so you only ran 33 plays. So I don't think people understand, too, once you get to running clock, you don't get a lot of plays. I mean, it goes pretty quick. I mean, no matter who's in the game, it's pretty fast. But you look at the numbers, Cam O'Hara, 8-9 for 124 yards, 2 touchdowns. Isaiah Johnson, no matter what, even if he gets a catch, it always seems to be in the end zone. Keegan Mayer, 7 rushes, 61 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jaden Combs continues, 37-yard reception for a TD. Punt return, that's if my memory is correct, and sometimes it fades. That's his third return for a TD, 2 kickoffs, that being a punt return. Corey Freihofer got into the kickoff return, 70 yards for a TD. So you really have, and I think one thing that sticks out is spreading of the wealth offensively. You do have a lot of guys, and obviously I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Austin Alexander didn't play. Doesn't look like he may play this week. And, last week in this Dixie Heights game, he had 5 sacks. That's a year. At the high school level, That's a year for some kids. He had them in one game last year, the close victory against Dixie Heights.
Yeah, and we'll find out later on this week, where we're at with Alston. We anticipate he'll be back and ready to go come playoff time. But kind of what you mentioned, the good thing is, we kind of filled in with 2 additional players this week with Isaac Brown and Mason Stanton on the offensive side of the ball, and they both did a great job. Mason had 2 big catches for 40-something yards. Isaac had a nice catch down on the goal line. So, even though Austin, who's one of our prime targets, didn't play, some other kids stepped up and did a really good job for us. Defensively, he hurts us a little bit more, I think, than offensively, especially this week, just with the way Dixie wants to run the ball.
So let me ask you, and I haven't followed the RPI, but I know this is going to sound weird. You lost a little of your lead, would be a way to say it, correct? And I'm not going to even begin to understand the computing of this. But correct me if I'm wrong, as it stands right now, in theory, you would host the first 2 rounds almost assuredly, correct? Is that accurate? Assuming you win Friday.
Yeah, and I think regardless of what we do Friday, we've still sealed the number 1 spot. So, we should host the first 2 rounds regardless of Friday night. But, Friday's a big game for us for multiple reasons, a 10-0 record. And also, a lot, I guess, could happen. But I believe if we win Friday, we're going to hold on to that 1 spot in the RPI and should host throughout the playoffs until we lose or get to the finals.
And you want to be one of the first 2 because that guarantees you through the state semis, right? You're essentially, if you're either 1 or 2 in 5A, you're at home up until the state final. Is that accurate? Am I reading this correctly?
Yes and no. This year, probably so. But if you're the number 2 and the number 1's on the East,
I got you. Okay.
Then that could.
So does it look like you'll play the loser of Collins South Oldham in the first round? Is that the way it breaks down?
Collins, they're in a position they're going to rather be the 2 seed or the 4 seed. They win, they become the 2 seed and get a home playoff game. They lose, they're the 4 seed and coming to us.
And there are only 9 undefeated teams in the state of Kentucky now, and you're the only one left in 5A, and there's no one left in 6A. So, that's, of the large school divisions, that's pretty impressive too, because I don't think people realize, and I've said this before, I don't care where you are, who you are, it's hard to win every week. It's very difficult. You look at you're 12-3 last year, so you're 21, and my math isn't good, but you're 21-3 in the last 2 years. That's pretty impressive. And that's something for this group. Certainly if you're a senior, you want to leave your legacy, why not go out 10-0 and win on the road over at Dixie Heights?
Yeah, and I think it's something our seniors everyone asks us all the time, these last couple of weeks, how do you prepare with these guys? And these kids are just locked in. We got a great group of seniors, and they just kind of go about their business. It kind of sounds cliche, like, just worry about the next game, but that's really what these kids are worried about. Early in the year, I think we were playing a little tight, and we talked with the kids about just worry about the next game and not worry about anything in the future. And I think they've kind of bought into that, and they just kind of go in, play the game at hand, and they worry about the next game after that game's over.
All right, you're released for now. I'm going to welcome up Mike Dyer. I have a list of questions here, right? This is called preparedness. And I got to thank Shane.
You do it or Shane?
No, these I did. This book back here, this is Shane. And I even, the best part is I'll even say, dude, I don't need any notes on this particular whatever. But he still gives them to. It's good reading for me, right? And congratulations to Shane, who became a grandfather today, too. I know he doesn't look nearly that old, but, And I'm just saying, yellow might not be the best color. Just saying. There's a COOOPER maroon. Some things are black. Yellow, school guard, crossing guard, whatever.
He has to wear yellow because then I look better.
Well, let me tell you, if that is that your standard for okay.
It's pretty low right now.
I better stop talking before I get myself. But I think Shane does a great job with the notes and very passionate. And I think I saw a photo of him today. Does he own any clothes other than COOOPER branded clothing? Seriously, shorts, shirt, I don't want to know anything else. Hats, right? But he does.
Let me tell you a quick story about Shane. So,
okay.
What was it, Shane? 2 years ago, we pass out all of our coaches' gear for that season. And we tell all the coaches, hey, you can't wear any of this stuff besides on Friday night. So, of course, he shows up that Monday. Worst practice of the year. I'm furious. I'm just steaming. Here comes Shane bopping in halfway through practice and decked out in all the Friday night stuff. Didn't go too well for Shane that day.
Well, he obviously doesn't adhere to that theory now. Did you change that? Because I see him all the time.
Not in this year's Cooper gear.
Oh, it's got to be
Friday.
the new.
Yep.
Friday.
New
Okay.
stuff.
Is that superstition or what? What is the point of that?
Because our coaches are kind of they struggle to keep things nice, Tom.
I mean, aren't these grown adults?
Have you seen them?
Right, yeah. Sadly, I have. Okay, so maybe I understand. All right, let's welcome up Mike. We'll take a brief respite. Welcome up Mike Dyer from WCPO.com. Talk about recruiting, talk about some of the teams on both sides of the river. And Mike does an outstanding job covering high school football, so we'll hear his perspective. When we continue, it's the Cooper Football Show with Coach Randy Borchers and others right here, live from the Florence Barleycorn. Welcome back to the Florence Barleycorns. It's the Cooper Football Show. Reminder, Barleycorns can be your place before and after all Cooper football games. You can even stop by. I know I shouldn't promote the other location, but I mean, if you're at Dixie Heights and you want to come back to the Florence Union area, you can come here Friday night, but Lakeside Park Barleycorns will probably be hopping with some folks as well. So, my pleasure to welcome in Mike Dyer, who I've known for a long, long time, was at the Enquirer, Cincinnati.com, and now WCPO.com. So, I mean, you've gone from the internet doing stuff, kind of, podcasts and writing, which you still do, but I see you on the air now out at games. And have you kind of morphed into that? Do you like that? Because we're both, there's a reason why we wrote and why we're mainly on audio. Great, but you're now in front of the camera, right?
Do you want an industry term here, Tom?
Yes.
I'm on several platforms. They like
you
to
are
say.
on platforms.
So,
yes,
that's
yes.
You have to and you got to be on Instagram. You got to be on X. You got to be on Facebook. You got to do a little bit of everything.
Do you enjoy one more than the other? I mean, it seems to me, and we'll get to this, but it seems to me like you really enjoy and I know it's a pain at times, but do you really like the recruiting aspect?
I do, but it's changed a ton in the 20 years that I've been doing this, Tom. And we're going to talk about that, I'm sure.
We are.
But,
yep.
It's just social media has been a game changer. I'm not breaking any news going on a limb by saying that, but it's just everything's different. And now you add NIL to it.
Yeah.
It takes it to another level, and we'll get into all that.
When I'm out, I was out talking to Tommy Bolden at Lakota West, and when you hear some of the dollars that they toss around that these kids are getting, it's staggering. I mean, they're like, they would be great contracts at the NFL level 10, 15 years ago. Now they're getting it to go to college. We'll get to that later, but let's talk about, I know, Mike, you were at the Cooper Ryle game, and I know you cover all of Northern Kentucky and Greater Cincinnati predominantly, but, this Cooper team's having an outstanding year, a 9-0 with a chance to have an unbeaten season for the first time, went to the state final, 5A last year. Really probably thinks it'll be a disappointment if they don't at least get back and maybe win it all. But this team's pretty impressive, especially on offense.
No doubt about it. I tell you what, Tom, we've covered 3 Northern Kentucky games as our game of the week this year, and seeing Ryle and Cooper, and I know Coach Borchers mentioned that was the most attended game in Cooper football history, if I'm not mistaken.
You're correct.
3,400 fans there. I mean, it was a great atmosphere. Ton of talent on both sides. You're going to see, guys playing on Saturday and probably Sunday in a lot of aspects. But yeah, it was a nail biter at the end. But very, very impressed by both sides.
Well, you mentioned about guys playing on Saturday and Sunday. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. So I was watching yesterday. I was watching the Lions-Vikings, which actually was a quality NFL game. And there was a play in that game that involved 2 guys who are alums of the Skyline Chili Crosstown Showdown, which is my event. David Montgomery, who played at Mount Healthy, Iowa State, played for the Bears, now with the Lions, carried the ball, fumbled. Ivan Pace Jr., who played at Coleraine, went to Miami, then UC, and is now playing for the Vikings, returned it almost 40 yards for a touchdown that at the time gave the Vikings the lead. It's pretty incredible when you see that stuff, and it just echoes on how good the high school football in Greater Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky is now, but has just been for decades.
I like how you interjected a quality football game, a quality NFL game.
I'll tell you,
we can read between the lines between that, Tom.
You don't
obviously.
have to read between the lines. If you watch more than 1 or 2 plays of a Browns game, you need to get a life, a hobby. I'd rather rake leaves, and the Browns are awful. Anyway.
But point well taken. No,
yes.
Certainly. I mean, years ago at WCPO.com, we did the all crosstown showdown team,
you did.
And
right.
Just to see Sam Hubbard and Kyle Rudolph, and I mean it goes on and
it's
on.
A lengthy
I'm going to
list.
miss somebody, so I'm not going to mention everybody, but it's just really unbelievable the amount of talent the Showdown has produced.
Well, let's talk about some of the teams. Obviously, Cooper in 5A. I think Ryle has to be considered in 6A because they played a brutal schedule. And, I mean, their only losses are close games to Louisville St. X and to Cooper. I mean, so they, I think they've got, they end with Dixie actually after this week plays against Ryle. Obviously, Beechwood at 2A, Covcath at 4A to get to maybe when they have to play Boyle County. I'm not sure anybody's beaten Boyle County.
Right.
And I guess Newcat at single A, but there are some legitimate teams year in and year out that I think are contenders once you get to the postseason.
Yeah, you mentioned Boyle County. I mean, they beat Lakewood St. Edwards.
Beat them handily, which doesn't happen.
Yeah,
I know
exactly.
Moeller beat them
right.
35-30, but most believe Moeller might be the best big school in the state of Ohio.
Right, no doubt about it. But, I mean, we've already talked within our office about, let's start penciling in who we may see get to Lexington, who we may see get to Canton, and certainly Cooper is right at the top of the list there as a 5A favorite around here.
And I think Anderson, after defeating Winton Woods, too, on the east side, they're 9-0 for the first time. I saw it in your story since, 2009.
Correct.
And they're, until they run into Archbishop Hoban and or Massillon, Washington, I mean, I think they, like last year, those are buzzsaws. Wyoming, you have to consider certainly small school, but they're every year, and it's been, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been a little lean over in Greater Cincinnati winning state championships. And I know last year over here it was an 0 in Northern Kentucky, which is very rare. Sure. I mean, because it was customary where year in and year out teams on both sides of the river were winning state titles.
Now, Greater Cincinnati hasn't had an Ohio state champion since 2021, which may not sound like a long time, but we get kind of this take it for granted nature, I think, sometimes that, hey, we're just going to have automatic state champions. It's not necessarily true. I mean, obviously it's cyclical with the amount of talent and everything, but no, certainly, it's not a given because there are great teams around Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana as well.
Mike Dyer from WCPO.com, my guest, and Mike does a great job on all platforms, right? He reaches everyone.
Now you're talking, Tom.
Right, you got to get the I get it, Mike. Got to get the platforms in there, but let's talk about recruiting. You spend a lot of time in recruiting, and certainly before we get to specific players, the recruitment of high school kids today, like I was told by a coach, the Mid-American Conference, for the most part today, doesn't even recruit high school kids. And this is because of the transfer portal. I mean, or waits until they see what they get through the portal. How different has it become in the last 10 years, 10 years ago to today in what you see?
Well, I mean, you hit that nail right on the head, obviously. I mean, you talk about Power 4 conferences and now what they can offer in terms of NIL. And how about another game-changing moment? The National Letter of Intent is actually going away after 60-plus years. And I'm still trying to understand what exactly these student-athletes are going to be signing, not only in football but in basketball in November. But I think it's to try to see if you can get your financial package up front. Now, obviously, things change next year with the NCAA, with House versus NCAA. If anybody has read about that landmark, lawsuit and everything, these college football teams will have upwards of $22 million. I don't know if it's the athletic departments or it's the football teams, but anyways, you'll get paid directly by these college programs through NIL in addition to other opportunities you have. So we could spend hours and hours talking about it, but I did a feature story on probably our top recruit. Arguably our top recruit, I guess, in Ohio, in Greater Cincinnati area, Justin Hill at Winton Woods, the edge rusher. He's going to Alabama, and he was very honest with the process with me. I mean, we did a kind of a series of stories back in April, and I mean, a player like that, he can be offered up to 6 figures when it comes to a 4-star or 5-star athlete. And he's talking about his official visits and everything else that kind of goes on. It's, for you and me, Tom, it's kind of an eye-opening experience. I think for these 16, 17, 18-year-old kids and these high school coaches, they know what goes on. They know how competitive it is. They know just because you commit, we all knew this before, a verbal means absolutely nothing.
Well, that's what I was going to ask
put down
you.
to pen and paper, but now it's
there's no pen
it
and
can
paper.
go all the way up till signing day.
So, I mean, I had a coach tell me that one of his players was committed to go to a big-time school and was offered 6 figures, and he was going there, and another school came and said, we can beat that. So I guess that's the world we live in today. And I just wonder, because I know you talk to a lot of coaches. I think it's very different for the coach, too, for their dealings with, it used to be relationships and that they had with schools or previously having sent some of their players there. How much do you think it's changed, and how do the coaches high school coaches deal with the recruiting of their kids when colleges actually come on campus?
And I'm not going to name names here, but I see a reluctance on some high school coaches in terms of not maybe saying something yes or no about a player or their experience or how their official visit went, because every word is hung on, with social media. And I've had coaches where I said, hey, could you confirm I see that, so-and-so received a scholarship offer. They announced it on X, formerly Twitter. And the coach, I don't even know anything about it. They probably sent a direct message to that kid saying you have an offer. I mean, it's just the wild, wild west right now.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because I know you did a great job and still do, but it was, you'd say this player got offers from A, B, and C or is considering whatever. How much has that even changed from your reporting of what's going on?
Yeah, like I said, Tom, it's become almost a reluctance from a high school coach. They want to make sure.
So do you contact the kid now more?
Sometimes you have to go directly to the student athlete, or you go and say, hey, based upon what they announced on social media, their Instagram post. And these are things that we never thought of that journalistically maybe held up, but now you almost have to. And I'm still old school. I still feel like, hey, what if somebody sabotaged their social media account and
which
said
has
that?
To be a consideration in today's world.
And obviously, if it sounds too good to be true, sometimes we know it can be. For maybe a junior varsity player that says they got an offer from the University of Kentucky, and they're certainly haven't been starting varsity games, whether it be football or basketball. But it takes another layer of verifying, and even that. Sometimes you don't have it. You just go by what they post on social media.
You'll get a kick out of this story. Years and years ago when I was at the Kentucky Post, I got a call and somebody told me that Nebraska was recruiting a lineman from Bellevue. And I kind of thought, really? I mean, okay. I guess I missed one because I had.
Sure.
So John Harbaugh, now the head coach they play tonight, the Baltimore Ravens, was at UC. So he was in recruiting, and I had a relationship with him enough to where I called him and I said, "Hey, dude," I said, "I'm hearing about this kid, from Bellevue, Nebraska." He just started laughing. I mean, and that's where we are with. That's where we were then. Yeah. It was just different because I think sometimes when you got a letter, remember they would write you. Remember the old snail mail? They'd send a letter,
sure,
and they did that to anybody and everybody who might be recruited. So it has changed a lot. Let's talk about some of the players who are some of the better players. Who are, in your opinion, who are some of the top players just in the entire greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area that have either committed, if that means anything, or are going to commit?
Well, we're at COOPER football show, so how about I start with some Jaguars?
Yeah, let's do it, because they have plenty. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Austin Alexander going to Chapel Hill, University of North Carolina. His resume speaks for itself. Certainly the student athlete he is. I still may want to see his ID because I feel like he's maybe 22 years old already with his maturity and the way he speaks.
Well, you may want to see if Mac Brown's there next year, too.
Well, there you go.
Because I asked Austin was up here. We were just kind of talking off air, and I said, about that. And he said, I just hope that Mac and the defensive coordinator is still there. Sure. So, I mean, and those are things, people don't realize that. I mean, as much as they want to get on the college scenes, I mean, and you look at like Florida right now and maybe even Kentucky. I'm not throwing anything out there, but I mean, if you've committed to those schools, you have to make sure that the people that you committed to, are there, and if somebody new comes in, do they want you?
Well, that's where there's been a debate about whether they should move the signing period up in August or in June. I mean, and that's still December, but, that's quote-unquote the early college signing period. But you're
right. Austin is committed to North Carolina.
Certainly. I mean, Cam O'Hara, obviously a junior, already has the University of Kentucky, several Mid-American Conference schools, Tennessee State, EKU. I'd be remiss. Obviously, they have so many talented players here, so I'm not going to name everybody. But, on the Ohio side, Justin Hill at Winton Woods, edge rusher. Great matchup against Caden Peening. Their big tight end over at Anderson, who's going to the University of Central Florida.
And he's got a connection here because his family moved up here from Orlando.
Sure.
So that's and I tell you, and then Sion
Deontay Stewart.
Deontay Stewart, who's probably people are like Indiana. Now suddenly Indiana's like the hot topic in college football, and he's going to be a two-way. He's a two-way guy at Winton Woods, and they've got other dudes at Winton Woods. I think probably one of the better players who might not even play football is Matt Ponatoski, the quarterback from Moeller, who's only a junior, who's an outstanding baseball player, likely draft pick, but, boy, he's a tremendous quarterback.
In my mind, he's a Mr. Football candidate, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah.
But, he's had an outstanding season. But, you look around, again, in Northern Kentucky Highlands, they have a junior offensive lineman, I believe, committed to University of Louisville.
That's correct, yep.
You got some guys that are just – we think of skill positions, and I don't want to be that kind of recruiting guy because there's so many, rankings out there that I think sometimes the linemen get kind of lost in these recruiting rankings. But, we're blessed with a ton of talent year after year. I think sometimes we take it for granted.
We do.
And it's just one of those things that, like, no, this is a really good concentration of football talent around the tri-state.
In your opinion, obviously following the ratings, the rankings of players, do you buy that stuff as very accurate? I mean, I know there's all the different stars, and then you've got this, and he's number 38 out of 300.
In the end, Tom, it really doesn't make a difference until you walk onto that campus and start working out, whether you graduate early from high school or you just make an impact, in spring ball, whatever it might be, because it's good for guys like me, maybe like guys like us that, we want to hang on stars and rankings and all that, but it's superficial in the end. It's you want to go back and look at all the 5 stars or 4 stars that made the NFL, and there's such a small percentage that actually make it to play on Sundays, and we all know that.
I'm throwing this one in. In all your years of covering high school football, who are some of the best players at the high school level that you've seen seen in person? And I know because you've done a number of those long, lengthy lists of and there have been great debates. But just when you throw that out there, who comes to mind?
Well, this is going to make me feel old because Luke Kuechly is nominated for the Pro Football Hall of Fame,
he is.
And he's only 33 years old.
Right.
But I think there's a difference too, Tom. Seeing these guys in high school and what they became, how they developed. And so I'd be lying to you if I said, Luke Kuechly, he's going to be a Hall of Famer one day. He was really good, but certainly I think, what he did at Boston College and some other places, obviously with the Panthers, he developed into his own. But, top running backs, somebody like a Corey Kiner comes to mind.
Yeah.
One of the best running backs we've seen around here, Amayan Williams from Winton Woods.
Now, I'm really going to date myself. The best I've ever seen is Carlos Snow, who was at the Cincinnati Academy of Physical Education, got to be old Cape, and went on to Ohio State were it not for knee injuries. I think got a brief with the Broncos, was briefly in the NFL, but injuries. But that guy, to me, weekend Mark Edwards, who had a standout career at Notre Dame and then went on to play in the NFL. They were among, for me, Richard Hall, played at Wyoming.
It's not a bad list.
But I think you're right. I think it's the flip side, too. Some great high school players don't necessarily make it at the next levels to the same degree. Now, I'll tell you, David Montgomery, because he was a quarterback at Mount Healthy, and basically, they snapped in the ball and he did whatever he wanted with it. You knew that he was going to be somebody special.
Ivan Pace Jr., you just mentioned both those guys in the same sentence, and Chuck Martin was the only one to offer him a scholarship in high school. I'll never forget Tom Bolden telling me that story.
He told me that same story today.
There you go.
He did the same thing he said.
But, you could tell he's a player, Tom. Like the way they went up to Canton, the way he was running the ball. He was undersized, still is undersized, but he just has that it factor about him.
Tommy showed me today, it's great. He said that he used to be kind of a jokester when he was there, and he said he's 24 now, and he showed me a sideline video from the Vikings game where he was still squirting teammates with a water bottle. And he's like, dude, you're an adult now. He said, I texted him and said, come on, man. That worked back in high school. But he did. He said, Miami coach Chuck Martin said, I don't know, because he was playing on both sides of the ball. He said, I don't know where this kid's going to play. I don't care. I want that guy.
No doubt about it.
So, and obviously, he went there and then later went to UC.
A player that I wish I could have seen in high school, and Tom, you could speak to this better, is Sean Alexander at Boone County. I would have loved to have seen him play.
I'll tell you a funny story. He was so good in Northern Kentucky that I remember standing at it was an East-West All-Star game, which at the time was played at Boone County. And he ran, I don't know, they might have let him carry the ball 3 or 4 times, all for touchdowns, lengthy touchdowns. But I remember telling somebody, yeah, okay, we'll see. Let's see how he runs. Once he got past the line of scrimmage, gone. Let's see how he does in major college. So he went down. They had the Kentucky-Tennessee All-Star game. And he carried like 9 times for 11 yards. And I'm like, see, I told you. Then, of course, he went to Alabama, and it was that breakout game against LSU, and the rest is history because unbelievable. I mean, the career he had there in the NFL. But it's weird. Sometimes you watch guys, and you see them dominate at high school, and you go, does that translate? You see that with basketball guys, too.
Yep.
But, he sure proved me wrong. Well, let me ask you a question about high school teams and games this year.
Sure.
There have been more, at least to my recollection, there have been more lopsided scores. And there are more teams that are struggling seemingly than ever before. I mean, and in Northern Kentucky, even like last week, you look at the scores, I'm like, good Lord. I mean, the games are just brutal.
Right.
Running clock. Why is that? Do you think, and I know you talk to a lot of people, I've asked even some coaches, what's the reason that there's very little margin for error, it seems like? And, boy, when you're in a down cycle, you're in a down cycle.
To me, Tom, it's been since COVID year, 2020. To me, it's kind of been the peaks and valleys have been greater, more the haves and have-nots. These programs, I know I cheated a little bit. I listened to last week's episode with Joe Daneman. By the way, I have a tough act to follow from Joe. But
Joe does a great job.
Coach Borchers mentioned a couple of things here, just coaching, consistency, culture. And I think there's something to be said for that as a program because if you have that that's the first part of it. If you have that consistency and you have those players and we talked about this years ago with some of these programs, having the feeder systems, having the youth programs, you're all on the same page. I think that has a ton to do with it. And now, I talked to Doug Ramsey at Over at Elder a couple of years ago. I said, tell me about your numbers, your depth, and all that. And he says, we don't have nearly the numbers that we used to, but the guys that we have are very committed to the game, and I think that's the difference.
Well, it's funny, I asked Tommy Bolton that today because I said, your years at Coleraine, which after Friday night will have lost 22 straight games, Coleraine, and back-to-back 0-10s, which is they play at Princeton. And I said, you've had 2 really successful public, because a lot of times in the public schools, it's cyclical. It's talent-based and class-based and numbers. And Tommy said, it's the youth programs. At Coleraine, they had the little cards. He said Lakota West, he said we now have 2 middle school, no, not middle school, but they're these huge programs. I think one's the Tomahawks in the community. He said now we formed another one. And he said it's that. And he gave me the number of kids playing. And that's that, because if you don't have the numbers to choose from, I think you go ask any football coach, how many really good players do you need to be good? And they're probably going to tell you 25 to 35 at the varsity level. You got to have those numbers or you don't stand a chance.
We're in a transfer portal era. We talk about it all the time in the NCAA. But, Tom, you and I know it's filtered down to the high school level.
Well, so on that note, that's a great point, Mike, and I want to ask you about that because – to me, open enrollment has dramatically changed at the high school level everything. I mean, it has because, you used to, these are our guys. That's my school. We're playing there, right? And we'll either get better or we're going to get drubbed.
Right.
Now, wait, they're better. I can go there. I can go there. I can go there. I mean, that's how much difference do you think open enrollment has made for kids? Because they see it at the college. I mean, it's ridiculous. You watch college games. There are guys in every game, 15 to 20 guys, they tell you where they were last year.
Right.
It's that there's that much movement.
Well, we're connecting themes here again. Social media has made the world smaller. These kids all know each other. I mean, it's just become one of those things where you're not seeing a coach going out into a parking lot and recruiting based upon what they're seeing on the playground for basketball or at a field for football or baseball. I mean, it's a matter of, like you said, these kids know each other. They're going to say, hey, let's go. Hey, come on
and
over.
If I can go somewhere where I'm going to win, why would I stay here? I mean, and that's, once you get kind of in a down cycle, it's hard to get out of that.
Exactly.
I mean, I feel bad. I mean, for a lot of these programs that are one, nobody's feeling bad for some of them that dominated for decades, but nonetheless. All right, in closing, I want to hear all your platforms so anybody who wants to follow, because you do such an outstanding job.
Thank you,
and it's
Tom.
not just high school football. You cover everything.
Yep.
But high school football's on the minds of folks here tonight. So WCPO.com is the place to start. That's the website. But where else can they follow you? Give all those handles out there and all that good stuff, right?
Thank you, Tom. It's at Mike Dyer on X, formerly Twitter. And we also have a Cincinnati area high school sports Facebook group. Have almost 15,000 members.
Yeah, that's got a lot of cool info in it too, right?
It's kind of become my de facto blog, which I used to do at the Inquirer. But I'll put anything and everything up there. Photos, video, clips, short paragraphs on, stats, records, milestones, upcoming information. Welcome people to kind of connect and kind of give some comments and suggestions. I get people direct messaging me. But Instagram, it's at Mike Dyer Journalist. And then, like I said, I think that kind of covers it in WCPO 9 Sports. We have our game of the week each Friday night, and we do some coverage leading up to it. This week, we are going to be at McNicholas for Baden.
Oh, that's
and
a big one. That's for the GCL co-ed title.
GCL co-ed title. So, and McNick looking for their first conference championship since 2017, so it should be fun.
How about that? All right, Mike, I know he's a West Sider, so I appreciate him coming over here. I mean, that's like you had to leave the West Side, right?
I tell you what, I
had
to show my passport, I think, once I crossed the river there.
Well, and trust me, it works the other way, too. It's the same way. Mike, appreciate your time tonight. Mike Dyer from WCPO.com, 9 Sports. All right, when we continue, welcome up a couple players. Max Wethington, one of the two-way guys, and Corey Freihofer. We'll talk to them about the season so far and the big game coming up at Dixie Heights Friday night when the Cooper Football Show continues from the Florence Barleycorns. All right, let's talk to a couple of the guys who have helped make Cooper 9-0. Max Wethington, who is one of the few two-way guys, right? Guard, yes. Linebacker.
Yep.
All right, and then Corey Freihofer. Now, Max is a junior. Corey's a sophomore. Getting the family tree here, right?
Yes.
Because it's – so make sure I get this right. Your mom is Tammy, correct?
That's correct.
Mom played basketball at NKU for the legendary Nancy Winstel.
Yep.
Is that correct? All right.
It
so
is.
You got some pretty good genes, right? Because, I mean, right?
Some might say.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, would that some include you?
Yeah, why not?
No, you bet. See, I'm trying to help you here, man. You can earn points here tonight, but obviously it's a very talented family. People who watch Cooper girls basketball know the Freihofers and what you guys have all, so it's all good. All right, Max, we'll start with you. So guard, linebacker. Do you have a preference? Now, guard is not was not really one of your staple positions to start with, correct?
No.
So how did you wind up playing guard?
Well, we were in need of some guards, and last year we had 2 linebackers who played guard, and they decided to do the same thing this year and asked me to be one, and I was happy to do it.
So how difficult was that? So did you not play much offense before you moved to guard?
No, not really. No.
So do you prefer defense? You prefer hitting people or blocking people?
Hitting people for sure.
But it's got to give you a good feeling with this offense being as productive as it is.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Right. I mean, what's the biggest challenge from going from linebacker is probably more instinctive, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's the difference and what is so difficult? Because I don't think people understand how difficult it is to be a linebacker.
Yeah,
right?
A lot of people don't realize how hard it is. But
do you feel like you guys are kind of like in anonymity, like you do all the work and the dudes get all the credit? Is that how? Is that how it goes?
Somewhat.
All right.
We do all the dirty work.
All right. So now you are special teamer, receiver, right?
That's correct.
Defensive back. So congrats on the touchdown.
I appreciate
it. Kickoff return, 70 yards. So being a sophomore, obviously still contributing, but what's it like to I don't want to say wait your turn, but when you're watching all these upper class guys, has it been fun, enjoyable? Are you learning? Do you feel like you're able to learn a lot from them?
I would say I am able to, just because a lot of the upperclassmen are some great athletes and great ball players. So every play, really, I can pick out something they did and just try to put that into my game. So
give me something, and obviously Jaden Combs has done an outstanding job of returns too. Have you learned anything from him on returns? Have you learned anything from some of the skill guys at receiver? Because you're right, there is a core of dudes who can really go out, make big plays. I mean, Isaiah Johnson, I think every time he catches a ball, it's a touchdown. What have you learned from those guys?
For the returns you're talking about with Jaden, really just not rushing in, just waiting, finding that open seam, and then just hitting it right there.
So you see guys on returns a lot of times, and you hear the north to south, don't run side to side, right? But do you find it? But it seems like when you watch really good returners, yes, they look for the lanes, yes, they follow blockers, but they also don't hesitate. They also are decisive in how they return. How difficult is it to make those decisions, and how do you do that?
It's almost like an instinct. You kind of just like, for me, you kind of just see a little gap, and like you said, you just hit it undecisively.
Can you think too much? I mean, do you ever find yourself out thinking, and just letting the instincts go?
You could, but I would say it's almost better, like you said, just let the instincts like do it itself.
So let's talk about. Let me ask you about the linebacker, because I think this year, you have to feel like as a defense, if you guys can just slow down the opposition, you got a good enough offense that you're going to outscore most people. Yeah. It seems to me like the defense has really stepped it up this year. What's been the difference? Not that you guys – and let me rephrase that. Since 58-51 to Highlands last year, really since then, this defense has played winning football. What's been the difference?
Just everybody doing their job. Real focused every week in practice, taking it week by week. Just everybody doing what they're supposed to do, and we'll be fine.
Do you have a linebacker that at the NFL level, college level, somebody that you kind of pattern yourself after?
I would say Logan Wilson, the Bengals linebacker.
Okay.
Yeah, I like to watch him.
Not a bad guy to do when they can actually stop somebody, right? Which has been the last couple of weeks is honestly Cooper's defense could probably stop the last two teams the Bengals have played, right? The Giants and
better than the
Browns. Honestly, the Browns might be the worst football team in the history of the NFL. I mean, you ever seen anything worse than that?
No.
They're terrible. I mean, so goals. Let's talk about 10-0. I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, for you guys, the last couple of weeks, has it been hard to focus? I mean, let's be honest. This is no knock on the two programs you played, but you're talent superior. How have the coaches kept you guys focused and then going into playing Dixie this week with a chance to have the first perfect season in Cooper history?
They always really preach just taking it like week by week, which I think that helps a lot. And I'd say that the team really takes that into account and really just worries about Friday's game and doesn't look too far into the future.
So how about you with the second season coming up? You got one more regular season game, and then I think it's what everybody's been waiting for, right?
Yep, the playoffs.
How do you keep, you could go almost, and I think Dixie Heights will be a formidable opponent. I mean, they always seem to, but I mean, you're going to have maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks to where you really get somebody, and you think this team's got, it seems like this team's very mature, got the right mindset, not looking ahead. And Randy has said on a number of occasions, the guys police themselves, if you will. Do you feel that same way?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like we all just are, like, we don't look over our opponents. Like, we take every week the same as we do big games like Highlands, Ryle, and going into the playoffs, it's going to be that every week.
And final question for both of you guys. You mentioned Highlands and Ryle, and those were two games. The Ryle game, they turned it over a lot. You had the lead, had a chance to kind of put them away. They hung around, then they had a chance to maybe, take that last drive before the fumble. And then the Highlands game, same thing. Mm-hmm. So you learn about when you got opportunities to put people away. But what do you think you learned from both the Ryle and Highlands games that will carry over into tight games in the postseason?
Game's never over. You got to fight till the very last whistle, and
What about for you? I mean, what do you think as a team, just from the guys, when you're in the locker room and talking, not hearing coaches, but when you guys talk among yourselves, what did you take away from those two games?
I'd say really it's important, like we did in both of them, get up early, but then like Max said, you got to play out the whole game because they can easily come back.
All right, well, there you go. Two more guys, well-spoken, contributing factors to this Cooper unbeaten football team. Max Wethington, two ways, offensive guard, linebacker. Corey Freihofer, sophomore, does a little bit of everything. Thanks, gents.
Thank you.
Good luck on Friday night as Cooper looks to go 10-0. All right, we'll have a final segment. Welcome up Coach Borchers and talk about Friday's game and anything else that's on his mind. Welcome back into the Florence Barleycorns, and this is the Cooper Football Show, Week 10. Hard to believe that the 10 of 11, don't forget Kentucky, for whatever reason, has an extra week of the regular season. And Cooper Ops, as a lot of coaches have, to take that. And I should ask you, Coach, what's the philosophy? Because you've always really done that, right? Play the 10 in a row and then take off. Is that because you feel by that time maybe you're a little beat up, gives you a little chance to recover? What's your mindset on that?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And there's different things, different philosophies with that. Sometimes you're afraid to take that week off. If you're really in a groove and playing well, you take that week off and you really never know how you're going to come back after that week. Sometimes you come out sluggish. But we've always kind of used that week as a week to get healthy and really focus on the fine-tune the things we have to fine-tune before we get in the playoffs. And, it's really worked well for us in the past. And, we'll see how it goes this year, but it's allowed us to get healthy. It's allowed our kids to kind of rest up, and I think it was a big part of our run last year because I think our kids got rejuvenated. They got their legs back underneath of them, and they were pretty fresh come playoff time.
All right, so the game on Friday night, 7 o'clock kickoff at Dixie Heights High School. Cooper at Dixie. Cooper 9-0, unbeaten in the district. Dixie Heights 3-5, 2-2 in the district. They play Cooper, and then they close their season with Ryle. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Armani Gregg, who's a really talented player for Dixie. 15 touchdowns, run for over 1,000 yards, and certainly he's a guy, you're always concerned about. And Dixie can score some points if had trouble maybe stopping folks on defense, but he's one of the most talented. I had one coach tell me he thinks from an athletic standpoint he's one of the best players in Northern Kentucky.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, the thing with Dixie, their quarterbacks continues to get better. The Fields kid, this was his first year starting. Greg played quarterback last year, and they moved him to running back. And, he's been banged up a little bit, but he's a kid. He's a strong physical back. He's a kid that can take it to the house on any play. And then, you load the box to stop them. Then you got the Anderson kid who played running back last year that's now playing receiver in the Fields kid at quarterback who's continued to get better. Their passing game continues to get better, and they've had a lot of success the last 3 or 4 weeks in the passing game. So, it's going to be a challenge for us defensively especially. So, we just got to, we're not going to shut him down, but we got to be able to maintain him and get some stops.
All right, so it's Friday night, Cooper at Dixie. Chance for the Jaguars to go 10-0, pretty impressive. So, and then take a week off, but we're not taking a week off. Might be a bye, but we're here next week. Shane is making us come next
Tom,
week.
Who else would you rather spend a Monday night with?
No one. So thanks to Matt Razor for not only the great work he does on video here, but for the work he does for Duke Energy down south. Billy Prickett as well, and Shane Beckett. And a reminder, Cooper Jaguars football on YouTube. You can check this out. Gets posted midweek to latter part of the week, and share it with people and tell them to come on out to Barleycorns on Monday nights, and hope to see you before and after the game on Friday night. So thanks to Mike Dyer from WCPO for coming out tonight, and does a great job. You definitely want to read Mike's stuff, and thanks to the players as well, Max Wethington and Corey Freihofer. To everybody else for coming out.